We'll get started at the finance meeting, Audit and Finance meeting. Approval of previous minutes. Mr. Joyce, second. Mr. Miller?
And your budget
all in
local
favor?
law is on as well, but that's what's tabled in law, so.
Number
we'll
one,
talk about it here.
be tabled, request a sponsor. Number two, be tabled. Three will be tabled. Right, number two's tabled, right? Number four.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Three's
And number four,
Mine's number 8.
it's on here, right?
Yeah, local law.
However, you can
Oh,
table
Chris,
it.
there you are. Chris, what do you want to do with this?
You can table that too, Gary.
Table of number four. And number five.
Land bank.
Number five, the land bank. Authorizing conveyance of various parcels of real property located in the city of Albany to the Albany County Land Bank Corporation. Everybody's looked them over.
We're getting the list for a few minutes.
Everybody's got the list?
Not yet. It was slightly different, not very much.
Not much, it was slightly adjusted. Give everybody a chance to look it over.
Okay, take your time.
Is that the updated one, Tony?
Town, yeah.
Thank you.
As soon as I give everybody in the committee one.
All right.
Anybody
There's
else?
two of these or?
One for town, one for city.
Okay.
We'll take one back here.
Chris, funny having us sitting on what you made.
Yeah.
You can have this,
Who else
Chris.
did I miss? Who else did I miss?
I'll give it to you.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, you came on. City?
You want to take a look at this?
Tony? I tried.
We can share one.
Thanks,
Sure
Gary.
you can, I'll make sure that you
You
can.
probably got one sitting here.
Us, him?
That's for
Yeah,
you.
we need.
Thank you.
That's city?
All set, everybody look it
Now
over?
we can share it.
Any questions? Motion to move?
Town one? I don't care what the city.
Mr. Joyce, second by Mr. Crochet, all in favor? Opposed? Unanimous, thank you. Number six, authorize the conveyance of parcels of real property located in various towns in the county of Albany to the Albany County Land Bank. You guys looked that one over. Any questions for, motion to move by Mr. Joyce, second. Mr. Kraus, all in favor? Opposed? Unanimous, thank you. Number seven.
Seven
Are
is
we
your
all-
public hearing.
Mr. Mendick,
Yes,
your public hearing on local law U.
all right. Might as well talk about 7 and 8 together since they talk about the same thing.
That is fine.
I served 8 years on this august body of audit and finance. And in every year that I was there, the final proposed adjustments that came out from the majority office ended up on the table either minutes before or right at the time that we had to vote on it. What this local law asks for is to provide a 48-hour period of time so that legislators can review the adjustments and ask questions and get the questions taken care of either beforehand or at the meeting. For 8 years, I either abstained or voted no on all of the adjustments just because I did not have an opportunity with which to review. And it seems logical to me, as a legislator, that I, in good conscience, cannot vote on the massive number of changes. And we're normally talking somewhere between 8 and 12 pages with multiple items on a page. If you've not had the opportunity to review them, if you've not had the opportunity to ask the questions, how can a legislator in good conscience actually vote yea or nay on it? So all this is asking for is a reasonable amount of time, 48 hours, in order to get the information, review it, ask questions, get the questions answered, so that when you come to the meeting, then you can, in good conscience, vote your conscience.
Mr. Kraus?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I echo many of the concerns Mr. Mendick has raised. I served with him on the Audit and Finance Committee for 4 years, and it was difficult, to say the least, at times to be presented with a final budget cut sheet, so to speak, at the meeting with little or no opportunity to review it. That there are two resolutions here, one to move this to a public hearing, which I think should be done, and certainly we can't take up the other one until we have the public hearing, but having come from a budgeting background, I think more advance notice about some of the decisions that were made would be helpful and would enhance the debate on the entire budget. So I would encourage the committee to move forward on this, to have the public hearing, and hopefully we'll gather some good information from that hearing to make a solid judgment on this local law that's being proposed.
I would just say that, I mean, I've done this committee 23 years and served the pleasure of Mr. Mendick for 8 of those. And well, those amendment sheets, when they come out, have all been discussed. There's nothing in it that hasn't been discussed before that's been unamended on those sheets that we follow through. And as we go through those sheets, and for the new members, you'll see on it's called a wrap-up session, where we listen to all the department heads. Everybody meets, we'll meet as a caucus and go over it, and then we make recommendations to the finance committee, and we come up with a wrap-up sheet. And those changes on there are very explicit. I mean, I don't think you can't say transparency is a loosely term, I would think in this case, because everything's right there in the open. Everything is right there to be debated. Nothing's pushed through. Mr. Mendick, you voted no, probably out of the 8 years. So, you know, and there was nothing hidden. There never was anything hidden. But some people need more time to study a very short paragraph that's not going to tell you anything. I certainly have no problem moving out to the public hearing, and let's take it from there. So, is that what you want to do?
Absolutely, thank you.
Yes,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm a co-sponsor of this. I appreciate Mr. Mendick's long-standing commitment to transparency. We should be able to review things that we vote on, and this is something that requires just 2 days' notice. It also prevents things being slipped in there at the last minute, and I don't know how anyone could be against 2-day notices of last-minute budget items.
And what's nice about this too, for the first time this year, a finance committee is being televised, so you guys can go back to your home and enjoy your coffee and tea in your pajamas and review this committee meeting 20 times if you want, to make sure you didn't miss nothing.
But we
come back and say, well, I wasn't aware of that. Well, we're more open and more transparent right now than we've ever.
Well,
so, but let's move forward.
What the camera should record is that we haven't had the opportunity to have 48-hour notice on substantive matters, and that the idea we can watch ourselves after. The point is we should be able to review these before we vote, and that's what this law would do. It would codify what should be a standard practice.
You're gonna see through the budget process, Mr. Grimm, this is your first one, I believe, that when all the department heads come in, and it's going to be in detail, line by line, you can ask any questions of any department head about their budget.
Oh, I intend to.
But I'm sure you are, and I would just say that by the time you get to the end of the process, and if you're not aware of what's in this budget, then God bless the people of Gilliland.
Oh, no, it's the late additions that are the issue, not the review. What we cannot have, which we must prevent, are these late additions where we haven't had adequate time to review them. That's the issue. I appreciate we have a thorough process.
Any deletions, which we call them deletions or additions, can be vigorously debated.
Yeah, provided we have opportunity to review the consequences of those additions
You're
or
going to be right
deletions.
there, because you're going to know why the changes were made. You're going to be hopefully you'll be at the meeting, and then you'll know. You'll have the background why these changes were made.
Many of the changes are discussed as the departments come in.
Exactly.
Well,
As the departments that are incorporated, those changes are incorporated into the budget process. And that final sheet.
are you saying there's late additions that all of those have always been discussed?
Late additions. I mean, you can get late additions the afternoon of the meeting. I mean, something that just changes. Just like tonight, we got some additional changes here with the land bank. Government changes,
2 seconds.
especially during the budget process, during the budget. So if a change comes on a final meeting night, 3 hours before a minute change, then you want me to hold the whole budget for 48 hours?
Well, let me ask you this. Were those salary increases that were added to the budget, were they discussed previously in a public forum?
Well, we will in the future, won't we?
Well,
I'm sure we'll discuss
I think
it in
the answer is
future
no,
when those
and that's
departments-
what I'm trying to
Well,
change.
when the departments come in and discuss it.
All right, well,
But anyway, I digress, Mr. Wanna move it?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, and I appreciate the discussion. And oftentimes we do hear from the department heads, there's a lot of questions that are asked. But then when we get to the final sheets that come out, clearly there's a certain amount of picking and choosing of changes that were made. It would behoove and benefit everyone on the committee if they had a chance to say, okay, here's what we heard, here's what's in the changes, we can maybe put some context to it, and then you have a basis on which to make a decision. But as you well know, what happens is we get the sheets and we start voting on it right away, one right after another. And there usually are very little questions, and there's really no opportunity to put it in context with what you have seen. Now, I think we're all after the same thing, and that is that the legislators have the opportunity to do the best job possible. And I think that all this is trying to do is to ensure that takes place.
Mr. Mendel, you, of all people, can stand there and say that you have no opportunity to review any changes or deletions. You question probably more than anyone out here. So how can you say that it's not an open process, that we're not letting the people see what the changes are? We know what the changes are before we go.
Well, that's not true.
We
But
talked about it with the department heads.
let me put it this way, Mr. Chairman. If I would have had 48 hours to review beforehand, you can imagine the kind of questions that I would have been able to ask during the process. I think it's just a good process.
And you still would have voted no. So anyway, let's make a motion to move out the public hearing by Reverend Joyce, second by Mr. Grimm. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. And we'll table local law unit.
Right, thank you.
Mr. Mendick. Under current business. Designated in the Albany County Convention and Business Bureau as a county tourism promotional agency to receive tourism advertising and promotional grants. Any questions for Michelle? All right. Motion to move, Mr. Joyce, second. Mr. Clay, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. You still got visitor guides if you want.
It's always working.
Pass those out. Number 10, amending the 2016 Department of General Services budget overtime. Any questions? Motion to move it. Mr. Joyce, second. Mr. Crochet, all in favor? Opposed? Unanimous, thank you. Number 11, authorizing refund of taxes in the town of Gilderland. This was an error. The assessor asked us to make an adjustment on this. Motion to approve number 11. In the town of Gilderland. Mr. Chili? Sure. Thank you, Mr. Grimm. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, thank you. 12, authorizing the banks of 1313 9th Avenue, town of Colony. This is an adjoining property owner, a budding property owner, wishes to take property. Any questions? Motion to move. Mr. Joyce, second. Mr. Kraus, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, thank you. 13, authorizing payments of 406 North Pearl Street in the city of Albany. This is another abutting property owner, a business person in Albany, North Albany, and they wish to buy the property to expand his lot. Any questions?
Where is this in North Albany?
The family dance heating on North Pearl.
I'm not part of this committee, but that is part of my legislation.
They've been there 16 years.
Oh, that's nice. And I've asked this several times, and I've spoken to Pat about it also. If something comes up in my district, I would like to know about it. Okay, and this property is in North Albany, okay? And before you move something out in my legislative district, and I'm gonna say this every single month until it gets through, I would like to know about it before it is voted upon. It's gonna come in, I wish somebody would say something to me. I think it's just the right thing to do. Not only is it part of my legislative district, but I live in Norfolk, okay? So when you tell me it's so-and-so, I pretty much know who's out there, okay? It would just make, to me, it makes sense. We do have neighborhood association, and there's different things that do come up in neighborhood associations in regards to of the businesses and, you know, what is going on in our community. So I'm just gonna ask again, if there's something that comes up in North Albany, as you sat there, Mr. Chairman, and related that it is in North Albany, that you would at least speak to me as the legislator in that district about it. I would just appreciate it.
I agree. I mean, I certainly have no problem. I'd like to know what's going on in my district. But we can bring it up in caucus and see, discuss. I'm sure, we discussed that before, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, I wanted to bring it up to place to me.
Yeah, thank you for your input.
Mr.
Any
Chairman,
questions?
yeah, clarification, it was sold for $8,000 previously? And
That's correct. So this property is a severely contaminated parcel in North Albany. It is the site of a former chrome and lead plating facility. It is directly bordering a stream, so we don't know what is downstream. We do know that the state has come in and done some level of remediation, but as I'm sure the committee knows, that level is subject to change depending on what could be found at a future time. At auction in the past, it has sold. The price you see at auction for $8,000 is real. The only problem was after the auction, the individual stopped immediately paying his taxes when he figured out how bad of a property it was. I assure you, you do not want to build a nursing home on this property or a location that you would have any sort of residential facility. So now what we did is this local business approached us, said they're interested because we now dispose of our properties through the land bank, and the land bank is currently not able to legally take environmentally contaminated properties. We had an appraisal done of the property. That appraisal came back, you can see in the information packet, for $17,500. The individual interested in the property is willing to offer $18,000 even. And so it seemed like the best course of action for the taxpayers of Albany.
because it looks like, I'm wondering how we got up to 18,000, because I know there's an assessment there, but a bid of 8,000 was offered, and they couldn't even come up with the $8,000.
No, they paid the $8,000.
Oh, they did?
They paid the $8,000.
So what happened?
And then what ended up happening is that it went back into tax foreclosure. So what happened is at auction, they bid $8,000, they paid for that amount of money, and then stopped paying the taxes. And then 4 years later, it came back to us.
Okay. Does this money go to the land bank?
No, the land bank cannot touch environmentally contaminated properties right now, because if they do, they're in chain of title, and therefore they would be liable for environmental issues.
So where does the revenue go?
To us.
To us.
The general fund?
Through a finance line, but yes.
Mr. Kraus?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned that there's been some remediation work done by the state. I'm assuming that's DEC.
Correct.
Have they categorized that as a particular site, as a hazardous waste site?
I'm not sure they've categorized it as a hazardous waste site. It's a contaminated site. It has had remediation to a certain degree completed, but as I'm sure you understand it, it's a former chrome and lead plating facility, so they can only do so much, and that's why I mentioned it's only able to be used for certain things.
I understand, but as far as you know, it's not on the hazardous waste site.
Not that I know of, yeah, and we weren't involved in the cleanup at all.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I would point out that that we had an assessment done at 17.5, so we're getting 500 more than
Right.
this.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, one.
Okay, so now where is, you said it's next to the stream?
Do you know where there's a spring, if you go up North Pearl, there's a big green building, Albany Spring.
There's the Tivoli's.
It's
we call it
directly
the
next
Tivoli
to it.
Spring runs down to the back.
There's a stream from Tivoli Park that comes right down.
So you said it's at, okay, so when you come down North Pearl Street and
Yes.
you go around the overpass where the
The train tracks.
the width, okay.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot right there.
No,
That-
keep
that-
going.
And then you keep going.
Yep.
And then there's the stream, the spring is right there.
Yes.
Okay.
It's fenced in right now. That's exactly where it is. It's actually right next to the current medical marijuana dispensary, if folks know where they cited that in North Albany.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a new one on me. Okay, but, so I do know what you're talking about. So it's right there.
It's right there.
And so what are you gonna do with it?
Family Dan's is going to expand his existing business.
What's that?
I'm on my way home, I'm just gonna, you got my flashlight,
Just don't drink out of the stream.
Anybody else have any questions? Motion to move it. Mr. Grimm, second. Mr. Joyce, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, everyone. Where are we now? 14, authorizing advance of 22 Center Street in the city of Albany. This was a former owner.
Correct. It's a reacquisition for taxes owed. That's correct.
Any questions? Motion to move it. Mr. Clay, second by Mr. Joyce, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous, thank you. 15, authorizing agreement with Thomas Rafferty for the purchase and installation of window treatment, cubicle curtains at the nursing home. This is all part of the agreement, the bonding money we use, he's using for the renovations of the nursing home. It's all reimbursable from Medicaid. Any questions? Two contracts. One is for the cubicle curtains and the other one's for the window treatment.
Yeah, I tried to save a contract, so to speak. There were two RFPs, but it was this same company was awarded both, recommended to award both. So I combined them into one RLA, because there would be one contract for one company. But there were two RFPs.
Any questions? Motion to move it. Mr. Shea, second. Mr. Kraus, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
16, authorizing an agreement with this, authorizing an assignment assumption of agency agreement by the Albany County Chamber of Commerce, Capital Regional Chamber of Commerce, and the Albany County Business Development Corporation. Sean?
Thank you,
LTAC fund?
Mr. Chairman, first time in the red hot seat here. Believe it or not, in all these years.
You're experienced.
So, this is simply, we presently have an agreement. Albany County has an agreement with the Albany County Regional Chamber of Commerce to administer the Capital Region Business Development Corporation, the LTAC Loan Fund. And this is simply an assumption agreement because the chamber merged with Schenectady County. It is now known as the Capital Region Chamber. And it's an assumption agreement so that we just assume the same agreement with them. Different name, same
Is the
people.
LTAC fund just Albany County-based businesses?
That's correct. They have to reside in Albany County. Or at least partially reside. I've never seen, I believe the language reads partially reside.
You know, I think, Sean, after we're done with the budget, we bring those guys in. I'm sure a lot of members might have some questions about what the LTAC fund's doing, what good things they're doing.
Actually, it's going very well. I'm an ex officio member, but I go to all the meetings. I think it's a great committee. They do a great job, and I think they'd love to come in and talk to you about it.
Fantastic.
Talk to us about it.
Yes,
Mr. Chairman,
I knew you were going to ask a question.
did this come in after the RLAs? I believe it did.
It did. This is something that that's been lingering around for a while. They've been merged for about a year now. It's something that kind of fell through the cracks, but it's really just it's a legal technicality.
Well, I want to register my objection.
That's fine.
We're breaking the rules, and we've done that far too frequently, irrespective.
I honestly don't know if I was late on it or not, but I assume by you saying it that maybe we were.
Well, that was my question.
Okay.
I didn't see it in the RLAs, so I believe it was
Okay.
later. Who are the recipients of this money?
The recipients are business owners in Albany County that apply through, usually what they do is they seek financing through the banks, and the banks will recommend partial financing with the Altech Loan Fund, which was put together, it was a settlement years ago, an environmental settlement with a company in Albany County. I believe with the EPA, don't quote me on that though, where they had to set up a fund for the purpose of furthering business in Albany County.
Could you furnish me a list of who the recipients are and what the amount of?
Well, the
grant?
recipients are many.
You can go,
We
because
can
we
use-
get something.
If you look on their website,
You can
Is
go
it
to our
okay?
website.
it's on the website.
Okay.
You see me after, or if anybody's interested in it, we'll get you the website. It has all the information you want about it. Very transparent, great board. We appoint 3 members of the board. The county executive appoints 3, and the chamber appoints 1. Then there's a couple of ex officio, mostly business people, bankers, lawyers, accountants. They're a pretty good group.
Thank you.
Strictly business.
Thanks.
Anybody else, any questions? Motion to approve. Mr. Miller, second. Mr. Clay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Number 17 will be review. We'll start the budget hearing now. Our process, for those who are new, we start off with a review of Redfield, and then we have 4 other sessions. The other department heads will come in, and we will review the budget. So that we run this in an orderly manner, members of the committee will be recognized first, and then members of the legislature. So
We got, you guys got this?
Oh, I did not. Hold on.
all right?
I brought it. Thank you. Oh, we can take one more. I'll take one more.
There's extra. Yeah.
Everybody got a copy?
You got a copy? Somebody, we had an extra. Uh-oh. You give it up here. We'll share.
I'll get one later.
Everybody got a copy? Sir, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And the rest of the committee, I'd like to introduce myself really quick. My name is Sean Thielen, if you haven't met me before. I've been working in the budget office and with Larry Slacky at the nursing home over the past year, and I have the honor of being nominated for Commissioner of Management Budget at the Legislature's Confirmation Committee meeting following this Personnel Committee meeting. Prepared a little packet here, if everyone has one, it'll be a little bit easier just to go over some of the highlighted notes. On page 1 of the handout packet, if you have your budget book, if that's easier for you, page 43, 48, but this will be easier to follow. You can see our total proposed revenue is $619.7 million. That consisting of $528.9 million in non-property tax revenue and $90.8 million in property tax revenue at the tax levy itself. In a direct comparison, that is a growth of $6.6 million. On page 2, you can see the summary of this. $6.6 million, $5.4 million in non-property tax revenue growth, about 1.303%. Property tax growth of 1.2 million or 1.38%, and a total growth of approximately 1.08%. Revenues over. On page 3 of the handout, I know we might have some new people here. This was new to me this year. This is the almighty tax levy calculation formula. In all its glory. As you can see, it's not just a whatever your levy is and 2% or whatever the state deems on top of that for the year. We'll just briefly go through some of the highlights and the pieces of it real quick. We have the last 2 filings on page 4 for 2015-16 and our maximum levy limit for 2017 factored there. So as you can see, for the 2017 calculation, your full do not exceed, which is considered your 2% with all your credits and additions. You know, there are certain additions to just the tax levy
itself that I'll get into in a little bit is 93.1 million roughly. Those certain additions that I was talking about are like BOE chargebacks by the municipalities. These are stuff that gets added to your actual proposed tax levy that comes out of the budget for filing with the state comptroller. As you can see, our last year's filing is what you start with, 90.3 million. That gets increased by a tax-based growth factor, which is a factor that has increased from 0.6% in 2016 to 0.88% in 2017. This factor is calculated by New York State and is reflected at an increase of real taxable property in local government areas. This is generally consistent with new growth, significant additions to existing properties. On top of that, you do a summation of your net of pilots, payment in lieu of taxes. It was budgeted here for 1.967 million in 2016. That gets carried over. We are forecasting 1.954 million, which we canvass all of the municipalities and ask them for their input. They were very responsive this year. I've been told in the previous years that we had less than stellar responses. This year we all but one, I think. Yeah, all but one.
Who was that?
I'd have to get back to you, Mr. Chairman. It was a minor one. It wasn't like the city of Albany or something.
It wasn't like Albany or Colony or
As a side note, in 2018, there's going to be a large increase to the pilots for about a 5-year term. We got a response from Queemans. They're putting online their recycling plant, and I have a copy of that I could show you guys if you wanted that, Mr. Chairman. 5 years. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, the 2016 figures that you have here, since we're not at the end of the fiscal year, are those still estimates of what you expect we'll close out the year with, or do we have those
Mr.
funds?
Kraus, we let him do his presentation, and then we can all ask questions at the end.
All right.
That'd be good.
If I'll remember that question. If you remember that question. Okay.
Generally 2016 adopted, but just so. Generally 2016 adopted, not progressed out unless I say so. So we can go back to specific ones.
That's fine.
Number 7 on the sheet here, line 7, excuse me, the allowable levy growth factor. That is an inflation-based unit that is given out by the state, and that is a decrease from 0.73% in 2016 to 0.68% for 2017. As you can see, that we have a large carryover amount as number 9 in there. That's because we've kept taxes stable for the last 3 consecutive years of filing. They've been relatively the same amounts. That credit, which goes away year after year, but that credit consists of the lesser of 1.5% of your allowable tax levy limit, or the difference between your prior year's tax levy limit credit. We'll go to the county tax rate preparedness and comparison on page 5. It's a little good, feel good for everyone here. This is a summation of all the adjoining counties. For 2014 and 2015, the state comptroller tends to be about a year behind on this with your actual filings and putting them up on the website. But this is your tax rate per $1,000 fair value of the of home ownership or property. It was a better term for that. And as you can see, we actually did a decrease in our percentage for 14 and 15. That percentage also is a decrease in 16 of a few cents, and also proposed for 17 as our tax base, grows bigger. Next page is our sales tax receipts. As you can see from 2008 to 2016, just to give some comparison facts and see where it is. It's our biggest source of revenue. Our sales tax is being forecasted for 2017 at 263.3 million. This is approximately 2.6 million, or a 1% increase over the budgeted 2016 amounts. We took a conservative growth number, as you know, because we have pretty good employment in the area. We can't rely on, unemployment going away. We're at a really low number, less than 5% national average, so closer to 4, but. Year-to-date collections have been consistently up. Compared to 2015, 191 million, 0.4, compared to 190 million, 0.3, or 1.1 million over 2015, 2016. We've had slight growth in each quarter, approximately 1.3% in the first quarter over 2015, 0.5% for the second quarter, and 1.6% for the third quarter. Generally, the fourth quarter has, about a 4 to 8% difference due to the holiday season, so that's one of our biggest quarters, and closing that out obviously makes a big deal in the comparison of budget to budget. So, and 105.3 million in 2017 would be distributed to the localities with the 263.3 million budgeted forecast. As you can see on the next page after this regular sales tax, that's your quarterly comparisons. After that, we have a revenue summary by classification. This is also in everybody's book, page 48, I believe. And the comparison 2016 adopted over 2017 major categories. So the last page is the differences, and I'll have some explanations for them. Hotel and motel tax is forecasted to increase by 1% in 2017 as we are trending to meet 2016 budgeted figures. This is due to a slight increase in rate, and we've had consistent occupancy year over year, according to the Albany Business Review. Department miscellaneous income is forecasted to be up across all funds by $714,000. A fund down $1.6 million, mainly due to the annual concessions at the jails being reduced from $1.5 million lump sum in 2016 to only $8,000. They got an upfront payment.
Just briefly, because we have so many new members, very briefly, just identify what A fund, CS fund is.
Oh, okay.
Just so everybody knows what it is. We have so many new members, so just real briefly.
A fund is your general fund. That's when you see in the book, you see the A. That's your general fund, your main fund. It's the largest of all of them. It's used for all your departments, basically your mental health, your sheriff's departments, all your big departments. Your CS fund, I get CS and CD backwards, if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Chairman, if I could just pick up the risk retention. CS, risk retention. I get it backwards and I want to say it backwards. CS is risk retention. It's where all of our workers' comp, all that stuff is. And your CD, this is a very bad curveball, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Well, your D and DM funds are your road. Your G fund is your sewer department. Nursing home fund is your NH. Your V fund is your debt services. And then I'll get you the C fund.
Thank you.
CD fund. Community development, sorry. I want to say it wrong. We're at the nursing home. Okay. The nursing home has forecasted for a 2017 increase of $2.7 million in its department miscellaneous income, and this is mainly due to an IGT payment increasing over the short term. A lot of Medicaid, public sector, nursing homes got out of the business, it has shrunk the pool of people drawing off of IGT, which has grown our share. It was budgeted for 6.8 million this year. We're looking at, it'll probably be somewhere around 9.4 million for this year. State aid is forecasted at 70.2 million, an increase of 5.7 million year over year. This represents a reclassification of daycare of 3.3 million. This equates to a $2.4 million increase in state aid, or 3.4%. Federal aid is forecasted at 71.4 million, a decrease of 4.9 million, but the reciprocate of that state aid would leave it only as a deficit of 1.6 million, or 2.1%. Public safety increase of 125,000, as you might see in your comparison and not see it in the 2016 book, is a forecast of land bank proceeds. And the culture and recreation is a revenue transfer from department miscellaneous income of approximately 537,000, mainly coming out of the department miscellaneous income. And that's about it. Sorry about the CSCD thing.
Any questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Higgins.
I do want to let members of the committee.
No members have any questions?
I do have a question.
Mr. Graham?
Yeah, thank you. Resolution 445, it was written as December 31st, 2016, and the change was supposed to kick in. So I'm wondering, are we projecting revenue in 2017 for that legislation?
Resolution 445, is that the
That's the
sheriff?
That's the Albany trash fees controversy.
What is that resolution?
The reimbursement, the taxes, water, demo.
The re-levy.
Trash.
Oh, the re-levies.
Yeah, that's all.
That's in the.
Yeah, it was 2018.
Hold off for a year.
Yeah.
It's in the 2017 budget?
No,
No, it was pushed back by a year.
pushed back by a year.
There's no impact in this
But
budget.
we,
The money that we have to expend is available, if that's what you're asking. It's not like the money isn't there. The money is available for the current year to make these payments, yes. It's within the budget, and it's within, if I'm not mistaken, Dave, correct?
You're correct.
because there was a published report that said there had been a deal made.
Well, published reports by the Times Union don't necessarily.
Well, that's why I have a
reflect
question.
facts.
As far as I know, the legislation stands, but according to what I read in the legislation, the financial arrangement would change as of December 31st of 2016. Is that still correct?
The levy is done December 31st, 2016. So that will incorporate the charges for 2016, which will be paid. That's what the legislation says.
All right, so financially, nothing has changed?
What I'm trying to say to you is that just because you read it in the Times Union doesn't mean it.
So I want to, my question is, what is the fact then? Nothing has changed then subsequent to the passage of legislation, is that correct?
The perception has changed. The legislation has not changed.
Okay.
Mr. Higgins?
I just have 3 questions. As far as the hotel occupancy tax revenue you're budgeting for next year, that formula in state law is going to change once
For
it's
2018,
Yep.
by 2018, yes.
Well, we think it's going to be next year,
Probably.
right? So, yeah.
Significant completion
February.
will happen.
Significant completion will happen in 2017.
Yep.
We know that that's something that needs to get figured out. I know that there's been discussions between your body, the county executive, the state assembly.
I guess revenue-wise, are you guys budgeting a decrease in that based on the current law when that switch is going to occur for next year?
We fully have it in here now,
You do.
for the full year.
We made the
then,
assumption that it would get figured out.
Okay. And then on the one-shot casino licensing fee that we received back in June or July, is that, where can I find that in here?
If you go to your designated reserves in the front section of the book,
Is it in this handout?
No, it is not, because it is not booked as revenue for their, directly for the budget. It was booked for a tax stabilization.
It's in the tax
account.
stabilization fund.
Yeah.
so it's page 40 in your budget book. There's a line item titled tax stabilization. It already had an existing balance in that account of $150,000 from an action prior to my coming into county employment, so I'm not sure how far back it was. So we added it into there, so 150 plus the 1.7 gives 1.87 in there.
So you guys booked it as tax stabilization rather than actual incoming revenue.
Right,
Okay.
right.
And then where can I find the budget numbers for how much you're projecting in our local share of casino revenue starting next year once Rivers comes online?
Yeah, we
It'd be a hard one, isn't it? I mean, you don't
Are you
know.
not
We-
booking revenue?
we're not
didn't
booking
put any
for that
numbers
yet
in yet
because
because
it's
we
still
haven't gotten
that
any guidance.
So you get some
speculative.
free money next year then?
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Are they gonna give you any guidance on what that should be?
Well,
They
that
have
was,
not yet.
Gary,
They
you
haven't
just took
yet,
the
no.
words right out of my mouth. Did you get, are you gonna get some guidance? Yeah, from
We
DOE?
have not yet. I'm assuming either NISAC or one of the other groups will probably lead the way with that, but no, and it'll be very hard to forecast the first year or two. Just
Yeah.
first year, you're gonna get big crowds checking
Yep.
it out, sustainability and all that.
That's good, so that's,
So we wanna be more conservative and err on that side.
okay, as long as it's on the radar for next
Yep.
year.
I think it's a wise decision not to project something
I'm sure it'll be.
Yeah,
so
'cause
difficult to.
might not even be up and running, you know,
Oh, it'll be
50%
up
by
there.
then. You think so?
Yep, early. Every day they're closed, you're losing money.
Yeah, sure. Very true.
Anybody else?
Fine.
Mr. Berghoff?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm looking on the page that has the tax levy limit before exclusions. And I generally understand how the tax levy generally raises even without a tax increase because of increased real property tax places, et cetera. But I see the numbers, 2015, 89.9, 2016, 90,500, but you're showing a reduction for
Yep.
2017.
That's our previous,
What goes into that number going down?
Okay.
Why
It's-
does it go down?
for this case, okay, in 2015, you had more elections, okay? So that number consists of your tax levy from your proposed budget, plus your additions like chargebacks, like Board of Election. So Board of Election chargebacks, since they get levied back to the municipalities, we have to file that as part of our levy, even though it's not part of our budget.
Okay, so they're non-annual expenditure
Right.
adjustments.
They generally range from 300 to 700,000, depending on election seasons.
It's below the line.
Are there other things other than elections that go into that number that make it vacillate up and down?
Orders, I think.
Yeah.
I'd get back to you a whole list.
Court actions,
Yes.
okay, so whatever judgments are.
Yeah, judgments.
Yeah, I believe it's
But I can
actually
get
on here, I thought it was on here.
No, it's not, I think it's taken off.
Oh, sorry.
Try to.
Yeah, I know court actions are one of the biggest places there.
Okay. And then I just have another question about sales tax revenue, and while I understand the need to be conservative and projecting a 1% increase, and you're at, somewhere close to 1.5%, I think.
A little over 1%.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
just
you
shy.
say if the fourth quarter is usually a strong quarter.
Mhm.
If it were a strong quarter and follow the projections, what might be a best-case scenario?
So, right now, I believe the projection was about 2% over budget from 14 to 15. Which, for 16, to meet that number, that extra 2% for this year's, we'd need a quarter probably around 68, 69 million to break even with budget. We're gonna come in just a shade under budget. So, the 1% on top of the 2016 budget and the piece that, below that is our actual growth,
So you need to-
cash
you need to-
wise.
You need to come in at 66 for the fourth quarter to make budget?
It's about 68 to fully charge it, so it's,
68, okay. And then, so you're projecting a 1% increase over
the 2016 adopting.
2016 plus
Yeah.
a 68 assumption for 2017. 1%
Yes,
of that
yes.
is cumulative.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Very helpful.
Anybody else have any questions?
This is helpful, thanks, Gary.
Thank you for coming, everyone. See you Friday night at 5:30. Thank you for your time.
Sir.